surprised were you by these comments?
Sadly not that surprised. I think the comments that Rupa Huq made were indicative of a sort of a widely held belief amongst those on the left that people who aren't whites shouldn't be conservative and are in many ways portrayed as being race traitors, as being sort of tokens, sellouts. It's a narrative that is widely held on the left and something that I receive as sort of abuse towards me all the time.
I mean, you say widely held. I mean, very quickly, Keir Starmer acted to remove the whip, suspended her from the party. She has apologised sincerely. She hasn't had the whip reinstated. So they have taken firm action against it, and it certainly doesn't appear to be the views of Keir Starmer.
No, I agree. I think it's ironic that in moving so swiftly and removing the whip, they actually made the story about Rupa Huq. But I have limited sympathy for that and the swiftness of action that they're being credited for. The story only became a story after the audio was leaked, after the Conservative chairman, Jake Berry, wrote a letter about it. But it's worth pointing out that when Rupa Huq made these comments, she was sat next to Annalisa Dodds, who is the Shadow Equalities Minister. She wasn't tackled by Annalisa Dodds, as far as I can see. Annalisa Dodds has made no comment on it. And if she isn't willing to challenge her colleague who's sat next to her when she makes something or says something so abhorrent, is she prepared to tackle sort of more widely held views across the general commentary?
Yeah, can you just give us an insight into, you said that you've experienced this kind of racism. Can you give us some examples?
Well, I can. So I've received 75 comments so far. I've been keeping score this year with regards to being a black Conservative. I get called a token, a sellout, an Uncle Tom, a house Negro, some other words I probably can't say on air at this time. But this abuse is sort of a constant drip. I had 3 comments on Monday. It's very much an ongoing problem, and it's not something that people necessarily see. It's very much a sort of an intra-community issue. I know that those who use that language don't perceive it to be a racial slur. They think it's quite acceptable to use, but the way that it is used to intimidate people who hold right-wing views, to be intimidatory and effectively to show them that the price of dissent is to be called out and to be sort of tempted to humiliate them.
That being said, the recent Conservative Party cabinets have been more diverse than ever, and it certainly seems, at least within the Conservative Party at the moment, there is a real move to try and improve inclusivity and diversity.
I think that's just a case of getting the right people in the right places, and I think. To be honest, I think the sort of the conversation around diversity relating to sort of visual characteristics like skin colour is slightly misleading. I think it's diversity of thought that ultimately brings those people together. And you'll see that sort of the way that the cabinet is structured now is different to how it was previously. Sort of the individuals are different. I think that the fact that there are so many non-white Conservatives shows that it isn't a view that is rare on the right. That there are lots of people who hold these views, and that people shouldn't be intimidated or put off from getting involved in politics in terms of the ideal and supporting the ideology that they hold, simply because they're fearful of other people perhaps judging them and challenging them.
Is there enough social diversity, do you think, in the Conservative Party?
In terms of
where people come from, state educated, because they tend to be Oxbridge educated, private educated, certainly in government.
I think it's difficult to say. I mean, I myself, I ran for Parliament in 2019. I wasn't privately educated. I didn't go to Oxbridge.
And we should point out Oxbridge is heavily state-educated children.
Well, quite. But
there's 50%.
Yeah.
This kind of the belief that you have to come from a certain background in order to progress in politics, I think, is an artificial one. Again, I think it's another element that perhaps deters people from getting involved who might otherwise be very keen. I think it's a case of joining your local association and sort of getting involved and seeing where it takes you.
And just lastly, your message to Rupa Huq.
I think it's interesting that no one seems to have asked Rupa Huq why she said what she said, or even though she's apologised, what she believes now, what she believed before, and why she felt those comments were acceptable. And I think that's the drilling down. That's the message that we really need to take away from this.
We're going to be speaking to someone from the Shadow Cabinet, I believe, later.
Yes,
what would
Lucy Powell.
Lucy Powell. What would you like to ask her?
I'd like to know what Lucy Powell understands from what Rupa Huq said and what she thinks Rupa Huq was trying to say, and why she thinks those views are acceptable.